Anybody in here remember Michael Jordan? Old people like me, yeah. Michael Jordan was I think the greatest basketball player that existed. My son back there, who's young, is shaking his head, but he doesn't know anything. But Michael Jordan was playing on the Bulls, and they were playing the Cavaliers in a game, and Michael Jordan just went off. Like, he scored 69 points in that game against Cleveland. It was phenomenal. But there was another guy on the Bulls that year. His name was Stacey King, and he played a lot. He was a rookie, but he had a terrible game. He ended up missing a bunch of free throws. He scored 1 point in the entire game. It was about a year later. People were asking him about his career, Stacey King, and they said, what are the highlights of your career? He said, I'll never forget the night that Michael Jordan and I put up 70 points against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And that's kind of how I think the church should work. We look at our lives and we look at it as individual and man, we just scored 1 point, or we didn't contribute very much. But when all of us come together as a whole and as a body, we can look back on what we've accomplished as a church and say, you know what, I'll never forget that time that person was saved. I'll never forget that impact that we had on the community. And I think that it takes some big vision for doing that. And that's why I wanted to jump to Nehemiah this morning to start the whole revival off with, was because Nehemiah had this great big vision. If you know the story, I'll lay out a little bit of history. I don't want to preach longer than about an hour today. So I can't even see that clock right there, but so just hang on. But Nehemiah, he's in captivity. The Babylonians have come in and they've destroyed the city of Jerusalem and the walls, and he is serving King Artaxerxes as the cupbearer to the king. Nehemiah chapter 1 lays out. And the walls of Jerusalem had been torn down for 100 years. So for 100 years, nobody has done anything. The walls were in ruins. And some of his family, they come to visit him there, and he says, hey, tell me about the remnant that's left in Jerusalem. And they said, well, the walls are torn down. It is terrible. And the Bible says that it broke Nehemiah's heart. That he got a burden for fixing the wall. So I'm going to ask several questions this morning. What are you burdened for in your community? When you look around, not only your community, but when you look around the state, what are you burdened for? When you look around the world, what are you burdened for? Because God's going to give you a burden because he wants to do something about it through you. And he wants to do it through you and through the church together. And Nehemiah was burdened, and here's what happened. He just began to pray. And I think as a church, that's the place that we need to start. Is we need to start just praying. And if you go to Nehemiah chapter 1, and throughout the book of Nehemiah, I love it. I think it's one of the greatest leadership books that exists. It is Nehemiah. But throughout the book of Nehemiah actually, he prays 14 prayers that we have in that book. And this is the first one that we really see. It's in verses 5 and 6 of chapter 1. He says, Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments. He says, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer your servant is praying before you day and night for your servants, the people of Israel. And I love that. Nehemiah, remember where he's at. He is in captivity. He is enslaved. He's the cupbearer to the king. And I don't know if you know anything about that, but that's a bad job. You go to work every day thinking, honey, I don't know if I'll come home or not. Depends on who the king made mad. If he's drinking the wine before the king is, and if he dies, it's a good, if he lives, it's a good day and the king can drink the wine. If he dies, it's a bad day. But his circumstances haven't changed. And he hears this bad news that, hey, the walls around the city are falling apart and are in ruins. And he says this, Lord, you are great and awesome. God, my circumstances, what I'm going through right now, do not determine your character. God, you are always great, and you are always awesome, no matter what I'm going through. And that's the basis for everything that Nehemiah prays throughout the book. In fact, there's a long prayer in chapter 9, which is just the same. Saying, God, you are great and awesome. But he prays some other types of prayers as well. Right? In that same passage, he would begin to pray a prayer of confession. Saying, God, that I've sinned. And not only I have sinned, but my family has sinned, the people. Like he is pouring his heart out to God, saying, God, like part of the reason we're in the situation we're in is because I've sinned. And I think that's the prayer that we need to begin praying. Like confession was something that always confused me, kind of growing up. Like if God knows everything, why do I need to list out my sins? Like I've never done anything that surprised God. Like I messed up the other day, and God's like, oh really? I've got to figure that out. Like, no. Like, God knows. So confession doesn't mean necessarily going and telling God all the things that I've done. Confession is God is saying, God, you know what? You were right. Like what you said in your word, like that was right. And I've missed it. God, I've fallen short. And I think that's where a lot of us at our churches need to be, to say, God, we've just missed it. And we can blame the people from the past, but Nehemiah, like he wasn't even alive when the walls got torn down and they were invaded. He said, I've sinned. And I think that's a good place for us to start. But then he prays several prayers in the book that I call prayers of remembrance, which is again, like kind of throws me off, because he prays this in chapter 5. Remember me with favor, my God, for all I have done for these people. Like God's not going to forget him. Like, remember me. All of chapter 13, like Nehemiah is recounting all that he had done, and specifically regarding the Sabbath day and bringing some instruction back as he goes back to Jerusalem. He says, remember me for this, my God, and do not blot out what I have so faithfully done for the house of God and its services. Or in verse 22 of chapter 13, he says, then I commanded the Levites to purify themselves and go and guard the gates in order to keep the Sabbath day holy. Remember me for this also, and show mercy to me according to your great love. Like Nehemiah's going, God, remember all that I've done. And I don't think God needs reminders. I think what's happening is Nehemiah is reminding himself and reminding the people around him that, hey, like God, you've made promises to me. Like God, you have been faithful to me. God, this is what you've said. God, I want you to know that I'm positioning myself for a blessing. God, I'm positioning myself so that you will come and do what you've already said you're going to do. Like God, you've told me you want to bless me. You told me this is where I want to be, where I need to be if you're going to bless me. God, I've put myself there. So I oftentimes wonder at the church, is like, what would our prayer of remembrance be? Like, God, please remember me because I showed up to an air-conditioned building 1 hour a week when there was nothing better to do, when my kids didn't have a ball game or the weather wasn't too bad. Like, God, is that our prayer of remembrance as a church? God, remember me because I showed up and sat? This is a lot of fun, isn't it? Like, what would your prayer look like? But all that, Nehemiah doesn't only ask God to remember him. Like, I love this. This one's a lot more fun. Like, he asked God to remember those who are coming against him. And specifically throughout the book of Nehemiah, there's a duo of people, and sometimes a third, Sanballat and Tobiah, and then Geshem or Gershom. Like, they're coming after him all the time. This is what he says in chapter 4, verse 4. Hear us, O God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their heads. Give them over as plunder in a land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders. Or in chapter 6, he says, remember Tobiah and Sanballat. He calls them by name. Like, remember them, my God, because of what they have done. Remember also the prophet Noadiah and how she and the rest of the prophets have been trying to intimidate me. Like, now those are some prayers I can get behind. Like, God, remember that guy that cut me off in traffic. Like, remember that lady that had 1,000 coupons in front of me at Walmart. Like, remember that. Like, God, remember that coach who didn't put my son in the game. God, remember that preacher who told me like that I needed to pray different. Like, God, like remember, like it's easy to pray those kind of prayers, isn't it? Because we've all got a list. We've all got a list of people that have hurt us and wronged us and despised us. Like, I'll never forget the first time I really heard a prayer like that. I was a freshman in Bible college, so it would have been 1994. I was in Old Testament history class with a professor named Dan Dyke. He was a great guy. But right after the Oklahoma City bombing, He prayed a prayer that terrified me. He prayed like, it was for Timothy McVeigh, like, God, like, let his skin rot off, like, give him plagues and boils. Like that prayer gave me nightmares. I asked, like, hey, please never pray for me. I don't want that. But those prayers are exciting to pray. Are easy to pray. But we have to remember that Jesus flipped the script, didn't he? He said to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And I don't think it was prayers of retribution because of the example that he left as he was being crucified, as he was being nailed to a cross. What did he pray? He prayed, Father, forgive them, for they have no idea what they're doing. Stephen in Acts, like the same kind of thing, he's being stoned to death, like they're throwing rocks at him. And he prays the same thing, Father, forgive them. Like the writers of the New Testament tell us over and over again to pray for those that are against us. How are you praying for your enemies? But I think my favorite prayer in the book of Nehemiah is actually in Nehemiah chapter 6. And it starts in verse 9. It says, they were all frightened us. They were all trying to frighten us, thinking their hands will get too weak for the work and it will not get completed. But Nehemiah, and I love this simple prayer, he said, now strengthen my hands. That's a prayer that I pray often for the church in Kinmundy. Is God strengthen our hands? Because here's what I know. If the task, if the job, if the burden isn't so big that we are afraid that we're going to fail, it's probably not from God. And as a church, we need to have a big enough vision that people are looking at us going, there is no way that the church can accomplish that. There is no way that that's ever going to happen. And we need to be praying all the time, God, strengthen our hands. Like in Kinmundy, some of the things that we do, we have a loaves and fish ministry. The government was taking care of it for a long time. It was called Project Bread there, and we helped them and partnered with them a little bit, but then they shut down because of government funding. And there was a scramble in Marion County, who's going to take care and feed these folks, widows and shut-ins and all of that. And KCC just stepped up and said, you know what, we're going to do Kinmundy and all of Alma. So we're preparing 40 meals 5 days a week. And I looked at some of the churches that are in Salem. There are 25 churches in Salem, and none of them could get it together. So I pray often, because it's a lot. God strengthen our hands. We started a LifeWise program here in the last few months where we get to take the public school kids, 1st through 3rd graders, we get to take them out of school for an hour and bring them to church and share the gospel with them. It's amazing. But I've got to pray often that, hey, God, strengthen our hands. You've got 85 kids a day. We're getting ready to expand that to 4th and 5th grade at the start of the year. And I was thinking about you in your situation. Because I don't know a lot about you, but I know as a church, and so I looked up Effingham County and Shelby County and Fayette County. There are nearly 75,000 people in those 3 counties combined. Statistics say that about 50% of those people would claim to have a relationship with Christ. So that tells me 37,000 people are right around this church, right around this area. 37,000 people who are dying and going to hell if they don't get the good news of Jesus Christ. And church, that's your job. That's your responsibility. That's the mission that God has given all of us. That's the burden that we should all have, is that when we look at the people around us and say, you know what? If we don't tell them about Jesus, if we don't share with them, if we don't serve them, if we don't step up, they're going to die. And they're going to spend eternity apart from Jesus. So I would pray, Lord, strengthen our hands. The next thing I would say as a church that we need is that we need to perspire. There's a lot of work to be done. And I think the problem with a lot of churches is that we're willing to pray, but we just aren't willing to perspire. Again, I'm not knocking prayer. I just spent the last 10 minutes talking about prayer. But it seems like as Christians, we're willing to put effort into every other area of our life. But when we ask to do something for the church or with the church, we don't have the time. We don't have the energy. I talk to a lot of church leaders, and it's not that they're not praying for their churches to grow and to reach people. It's not that they don't want the people around them to have a relationship with Jesus. Honestly, they're just not willing to put in the work to see it grow. Again, here's what I've said. God's not going to call people to something easy. If what God calls us to is easy, like we would never need Him. We would never need to pray. I think about it, He called Moses to lead 1 million people out of slavery. Noah to build a boat when it had never rained, and some believe that he'd have to work on that boat for 120 years. Like, look at the early church and the struggles that they had as they started spreading the gospel all over the known world. It was a huge task. Nehemiah, where we're at, rebuilding a wall that had been destroyed for 100 years. And it would take everyone. In fact, that's what he says in chapter 3. Like, let's look at the first 5 verses of chapter 3, because after that, they're really just the same. Eliashib, the high priest, and his fellow priests went to work and rebuilt the sheep gate. They dedicated and set its doors in place, building as far as the Tower of the 100, which they dedicated as far as the Tower of Hananel. The men of Jericho built the adjoining section, and Zachor, the son of Imri, built next to him. The fish gate was rebuilt by Hassenaah. They laid its beams and put its doors and bolts and bars in place. Meremoth, the son of Uriah, the son of Hazak, repaired the next section. Next to him, Meshullam. And it just goes on and on. And Nehemiah, for an entire chapter, is just listing all of the names of the people that went. And I don't think it was to necessarily point out those people. I think it was to say, you know what? Like, it took everybody working together to get this done. And what had been destroyed for 100 years, we would find out that God actually rebuilt in 52 days. Why? Because everyone came together to work. Everybody came together to do what God had asked them to do. And I often think, why didn't they start before? If it only took 52 days, like, why didn't they start before? Why have it been torn down for 100 years? Like, it wasn't just Nehemiah. Like, Nehemiah couldn't come, like, he didn't build the wall himself. It would have taken forever. And here's what he said in chapter 4, though. So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart. Why was God able to rebuild in 52 days what had been destroyed for 100 years? Because the people worked with all of their heart. In order to accomplish what God has put before us, like, that's what it's going to take. For everyone to step up and work. In fact, I think that's actually the way church leadership should work. I think that's why Paul wrote to the church in Ephesus in Ephesians chapter 4. He said, so Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, teachers, to equip his people for works of service so that the body of Christ may be built up, until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. Like, the job of church leadership is to equip the church to do the works of service. When the body is serving the body is built up. Like, all of this can't be on your Pastor Barry. All of this can't be on your youth guy, Chris. All of this can't be on your elders and your deacons. It's called for all of us to step up and work. And their part of the responsibility is to give you what you need to be equipped to do that. It's not our job as church staff and church leaders to do all of the work. And I've seen that for so many years in the church as we hire staff thinking that they're going to do the work. These are the paid monkeys. They get to perform all the work, and then we can pat ourselves on the back because our church is serving in the community when it's really just our staff. Like, Nehemiah knew that way back in the Old Testament, that, hey, just as leadership, we can't do anything significant. It takes the work of the body. It takes everyone. So I think we need to pray and perspire. And finally, the last thing as a church I believe we need to do is that we need to protect. You know, when you're called to do something good, it's hard. And that people will come against you. Like it happened here. In fact, in verse 12, it says this, and the Jews who lived near, they came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. Wherever you turn, they will attack us. And watch what Nehemiah did. It's brilliant leadership. He said, therefore I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places. I posted them by families with their swords and their spears and their bows. After I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles and the officials and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. He comes back to this, who is great and awesome. And fight for your families, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Fight for your families. Now all of us would do that, right? In fact, this is South Central Illinois. Like most of you men, like you're waiting for that moment to fight. Like you have a gun under your pillow. You've dreamed of the moment where somebody just breaks into your house so you can use it. Like we'd fight for it. But I think a better word for this today would be to protect. Because again, Jesus flipped the script. It wasn't a physical fight. It was about the spiritual battle. Like Peter tried a physical fight. If you remember when they came to arrest Jesus in the garden, Peter pulled out a sword, and I believe he aimed for his head, was just bad aim and got his ear. Jesus picked it up like, it's not about a physical fight. Like we're fighting as a church, but listen, it's to protect hearts and minds. It's to protect mindsets, protect people from mindsets that can destroy their life. It's about protecting their salvation. Again, listen, I believe we need to protect our families and our communities. Like Nehemiah is talking to the men here, obviously, because he says your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. And I think that's one of the things we need to protect. Is we need to protect their perception of the Father. You know, so much of many of us in here, like we look at God the way that we view our earthly father, which is a problem for many of us. So if we had an abusive dad, we think God's out to get us. And he's abusive. He's just waiting for us to mess up so that he can blast us. If we had an absent dad, then we think that about God. That God's absent. That he doesn't really care. We've got to protect that perception of God and show them that God is a loving God who's willing to give anything for us. We've got to protect the priorities. I think we do a great disservice to our families and to our communities by allowing them to prioritize sports over Sunday morning. I think we do a great disservice to our families and our communities by telling them that profits and work and the money that I make are more important than my relationship with Christ. And we have to be intentional with what we do. And we've got to protect their purpose. And to know that they're more than their grades. They're more than their sports awards. Like they were created on purpose, with a purpose, and for a purpose. That God has great plans for them. And we've got to be intentional about it as we do it, church. Again, I love that Nehemiah. He said, protect them, but work. You know, remember when you were young, you would look at things and you'd laugh at them. And you get a little older, maybe things aren't as funny as they used to be. Like I remember when I was about 18 or 19, this commercial came on. And I don't know if that's when it started or that's just when I began to notice it. But there was an old lady and she'd say, I've fallen and I can't get up. You remember that commercial? Like when I was 18, that was funny. Now that I'm 50, I don't find that as funny anymore. Like I'm very careful about how I step off this step because like I don't want that to be me. And I would just say, hey, get up. Because here's the thing, we all fall down. As Christians, like, we've all fall down. It's not just those who are outside of Christ that need grace and that need mercy. It's every one of us in this room. Because we've all fallen down. Like, there's not one of us in this room that hasn't fallen in some way, shape, or form. But here's the thing, we can either sit here and get people to feel sorry for us for the rest of our life. We can sit here and say, man, this is just Cowden, Illinois. I don't know like how God's going to use me or to make a difference in this community. Or we can get up and we can work. Like, we've got no excuse to stay down. And by the way, when all this happened, just really quickly, Kyle, you can come on up. When all this happened, when the men challenged to fight, look what happened in verse 15. When our enemies heard that we were aware of their plan and that God had frustrated it, we all returned to the wall, each to our work. The work got back on track. The nation got back on track. And what had been destroyed for 100 years, God rebuilt in 52 days. So what is it that burdens you? What is it when you look around your community and says, you know what, God, that breaks my heart? What is it that maybe has been broken in your life for a long time? Like maybe it's been generational. Like maybe it's that thing that the sins of the father are passed down the generation, the generation, the generation. And maybe it's the thing that's been holding you back, that's been keeping you down for so long. I would just say, church, what's been destroyed for 100 years, God can rebuild in 52 days, but it's a matter of taking that first step. It's a matter of knowing it. I love the way that Jesus protected us. He had every right to cast us aside. I'm going to ask the men that are serving communion this morning to come on up. Like the way that he protected us, he said, you know, like, I've known you fallen. I've known you've not got it right all the time. And I know you need some help because you can't do it on your own. Because I'm going to die for you. Like, that's the way I'm going to protect you. I'm going to spread my arms on a cross to cover all of your sin. And that's what we get to celebrate each and every week as a church. That's why I love this time so much. We've made it so individual in the churches, and we push through it many times, and it seems like that. But it's really this time of remembering that what's been destroyed, our lives, our relationship with God, what's been destroyed has been fixed by the way that God loved us. So I'm going to ask you to stand. And we're going to take communion together. I'm going to pray, and Kyle's going to sing the song, Lord, I Need You, because that's where we all are.